Hello, everybody, and welcome to this extraordinary emergency session of the Ask Abhijit show. I hope you're all doing very well. And this obviously is in the context of the US election result. Donald Trump has won. He is the 47th president elect of the United States, and he's going to take power in January 21 or something like that, somewhere around that time. So that's what this is about. That's why this emergency live stream, I am doing it. And I look forward to your questions. What we have to understand is this. The United States is the most important nation in the world. It's the most powerful political, geopolitical, imperial entity that has ever existed in human history. And its impact on human history is going to be felt for centuries, if not a couple of thousand years, if not more. That's how important the US is. And we have to pay attention to this nation. And we have to understand this nation. And the fact is that the US is an extremely misunderstood nation. Very few people understand it properly. And that's why I'm announcing a new podcast called Understanding America, which I'm going to start releasing from next week onwards. It's going to be a once a week podcast, one episode per week. It's going to have at least 100 episodes. So it's at least a 2-year project at minimum. And I'm going to take a really deep dive in each episode on one particular aspect of American history, more or less chronologically. So it's going to be a big project. It's going to start next week, the Understanding America podcast on this channel. So this is the announcement. I look forward to having you on that. But yeah, today we are talking about the election result. And let's take a look at who all is there on the live stream. Let me see. I can see a whole lot of people. Let's see. We have Geopolitical Dubey, Atish, Digpal, Sats, Kunjan, Pargi, Praveen Tyagi, Ashish Karan, Ayush Pandey, Bub, Onion Duck Agent, Hoin, Zeus, 1V, Zubon Izank, Arbit Pathak, Rudra, Om Bekerikar, Vinit Mishra, Bishwajit, Bapi, Pranay Paul, Janavi, Ralla Avinash, Guru, Kant, Mukhe, Harsh Singh, Bhumihar, the L, Abhishek Dwivedi, Tushar Kalburgi, Vivekananda Panda, Gopinath Besra, Chetan Deshpande, Ayush Pandey again, Sarang Khadke, SG Gupta, Mrinalini, Priyanka Javalia, hello, Alok Bhatt, Swapnesh Shiralkar, Mr. Busy Bee, Subodh Shelake, Advait Naga, Nad Gauda, Guide Realms, V, Noop, Malaki, N, Abhijit Chavda Light, Rinchan Karma, Somya Ray, RMS, and a whole lot of other people. So thank you all for being on the live stream. And let's take the questions. Okay, let's begin here. Noob Gamers Shaggy says, what's going to happen with Bangladesh? Bangladesh is, yes, it's a matter of immediate concern for us in the Indian subcontinent, isn't it, Bangladesh? And the Biden-Harris regime has quite recently carried out a regime change operation in Bangladesh. They, as we know, I'm sure everyone's aware, they removed the democratically, constitutionally elected Sheikh Hasina government from power. She was ousted. She was forced to leave the country by the Bangladesh military. And now there's a puppet regime in place, a completely undemocratic, completely unelected, completely unconstitutional puppet regime is in place with this fellow called Mohammed Yunus as the face of the puppet regime. It's actually the Bangladesh military that's running the show. And the Bangladesh military obviously has a much larger master out there, which we all understand as the US. This has been coming. It's been a long time coming. Sheikh Hasina spoke about this in the years coming up to the actual coup. So that's the situation, that's the context in which this question has been asked. What will happen with Bangladesh? Because less than a week before the election result, which is today, Trump had tweeted this. Let's find his tweet. I don't think it'll be easy to find his tweet. There'll be a lot of tweets in the way. But he essentially tweeted about Bangladesh, and he said that he strongly condemns the barbaric attacks on the Hindus and other minorities in Bangladesh, and so on and so forth. And he also spoke about the need for India and the US to work together. And he said that if elected, he will resume cooperation, kind of like in some words he said that with his good friend Narendra Modi and so on and so forth. So that was the deal. So he actually was one of the very few world leaders to condemn strongly what's happening in Bangladesh, the pogroms against Hindus and other minorities, also because you got to speak about them, but mainly against Hindus and also against Buddhists and so on. That's been happening ever since this Muhammad Yunus this regime came to power. They've been going after the Hindus. Bangladesh has once again become East Pakistan, and this was all done by the Biden-Harris regime. And the objective is to encircle India and so on. I've spoken about it at length. I'll not go into that right now. So the question is, what happens now? Trump is now going to be the president, January some 21st or so, whatever date onwards. So what happens? Will Sheikh Hasina be brought back to power? Will Mohammed Yunus be ousted? Lots of Indian commentators are speculating right now on social media. I'll not go into the tweets and all that, but they're speculating that Mohammed Yunus must be trembling and all that. I disagree completely. Bangladesh, East Pakistan, is an extremely valuable asset for the United States in the Indian subcontinent. Why would you give it up? I mean, sure, under Trump's leadership, the United States may ask the Bangladeshi regime to go easy on the Hindus, on the minorities, and stop genociding them and all that. Maybe that'll happen. Sure. I'm sure Mr. Modi will speak with Mr. Trump and use his influence to end the violence against Hindus to a certain extent, hopefully to a large extent, hopefully completely. But beyond that, I don't see anything else happening. I don't think Mohammed Yunus will be thrown out of power and Sheikh Hasina will be allowed to come back. Absolutely not. Mark my words. That's not happening. Even among friends, you need leverage. Because in the game of geopolitics, there are no real friends. I mean, you may have individual friendships between two world leaders. Let's say between Donald Trump and Mr. Modi. We know that they got along really well together. So there may be an individual friendship there. But this is geopolitics. It's about national interest. I may be your friend, but I have my national interest and you have yours, and we're going to deal between the countries from that perspective. Our individual friendship means nothing in that context. That's how it works in geopolitics. And the US is concerned about the increasingly larger role that India is playing on the geopolitical stage, and eventually the way the Indian economy is growing, India is going to become a very large power, and that's obviously a problem. That's something they don't want to see happen. That's why they want to contain India. And Bangladesh is an excellent asset to have in the subcontinent to contain India, to play a certain part of the role in containing India. So I do not see Donald Trump having the Mohammed Yunus regime ousted and having Sheikh Hasina reinstated. That's not going to happen. So Bangladesh, no major change. Maybe an easing up of the violence against Hindus. Maybe that will be curbed to a certain extent once Trump comes to power. But beyond that, I don't see a lot happening. Project Cookie Land for Christ will continue. That will continue. Even if Donald Trump is in power, it will still continue. So that's how the game is played. Transactionally, the relationship will get better, but when it comes to Bangladesh, when it comes to Project K, Kokila, and the Manipur disaster, not a lot will change. That's how I see it. Okay, next question. Lots of questions. Veer Shekhawati says, what's my take on the Mizoram Chief Minister's activities in the United States? Very interesting stuff that's going on. So this gentleman, I forget his name, I can't pronounce his name, Mr. Lal something, the Chief Minister of Mizoram. So this gentleman is a constitutionally elected representative of the Indian people, right, in the state of Mizoram. He has taken an oath of office, and he has sworn to uphold the constitution and so on and so forth, and the sovereignty, national territorial integrity, etc. of the country. But in the US, he's been making these statements in which he's essentially saying that we, the Zo people, the Cookie Zo people or whatever, see, the Mizos and the Zomis and the Cookies, etc., are the same people. So when it comes to the cookie infiltration that's happening inside India, lakhs of cookies coming into India across the border, a lot of that allegedly is said to be coming in through Mizoram. So Manipur, Mizoram, Nagaland, etc., the entire eastern flank of India, we've always had an open border policy with Burma. Burma is a friendly nation, has been historically a friendly nation. It's part of the Indosphere, same culture, etc. So we have no actual issues over there, no territorial disputes also. But now there's a situation there where there's a civil war, and and the cookies, this particular tribal group, the cookies, they are actually not even Burmese. They don't speak the Burmese language. They don't practice Burmese culture. They have mostly converted to Christianity or whatever other Abrahamic religion. Some of them claim to be Jewish, despite being a tribe that eats pork, which is very interesting. Yeah. And so the cookies and the Mizos are the same people. So a whole lot of this infiltration is allegedly happening via Mizoram. Lakhs of them are being brought in via the Mizoram Burma border, allegedly, and then they are routed into they're pushed into Manipur. They're not allowed to settle in Mizoram, but they're pushed into Manipur to occupy Manipur, and that's how thousands of artificial villages, new villages, have come up in Manipur, southern Manipur, especially in the past few years. That's the issue. So looks like the Mizoram government is kind of allegedly complicit in what's happening. I mean, that's the allegation that has been made repeatedly of late. Okay, and these individuals, once they come in, they get all the documentation and all, and they essentially become Indian citizens, and they get more rights and privileges than the actual indigenous people of Manipur. That's what's happening. This is a disaster, absolute disaster. Now, there's a whole bunch of cookies who live on the eastern side of the border in Burma. There's a whole bunch of them who have infiltrated into India and who have settled in, who are now occupying Manipuri territory. And there's the cookie, and there's a Mizo people as well who live in Mizoram. Same ethnic group spread across, and a bunch of them also apparently live in the Chittagong Hills region of Bangladesh. So the cookies are currently fighting three governments. They're fighting the Burmese government. They're fighting the Bangladesh government. Okay, military, civil war kind of situation, insurgency, terrorism activities, and they're also doing the same thing, terrorism in Manipur against the Indian government. They are fighting three nations. Okay, and look, this ragtag, half-naked tribal group. How come they are so very well organized? First question. Secondly, where is this limitless supply of arms and ammunition coming from? Drones. They bombed the capital of Manipur via drones, through drones. Imagine the capital of an Indian state is under attack by drones. Drone bombing. Incredible. How did they get the drones, the technology, the know-how, etc.? And who is organizing them? Who's providing the leadership? Obviously, it's being done from outside. There's a larger power in play over here. The puppet masters live very far away across the oceans, the other side of the planet. So the church is very much involved in this. Okay, it's very well known. So essentially, it's Project K, Cookie Land for Christ, and the objective is to create a new nation, artificial Christian nation, out of parts of India, Bangladesh, and Burma. Which parts of India? Mizoram and Manipur. Large parts of these two states. Okay, so this artificial nation essentially cuts off India's access to Southeast Asia, to Eastern Asia, the same way that Pakistan cuts off India's access to Western Asia and Eurasia. The same sort of thing. So they want to completely, this larger power out there wants to completely encircle India. Imagine the Chinese string of pearls on steroids, that sort of thing. So that's the context in which we have to see the activities of the esteemed chief minister of Mizoram, who goes to the US, and from US territory says that we cannot accept the division of the Zo people, and we are divided across 3 or 4 countries or whatever, and we will reunite and all that. And then when he is asked about this, the statement that is put out later, when this all came and became a big issue on social media, the statement that's put out is that he is talking about reunification under the context of the Indian nation or something. That's the kind of excuse he's making. Essentially, what he is saying, that doesn't really cut it. It's not convincing at all. What if you and the text of his speech is actually available on a government website, on an Indian government website, official website. This secessionist sentiment is shared, is put out proudly on an Indian government website. So that's what's happening. It is extremely problematic for us, and the real puppet master behind all of this is the United States. The deep state, the CIA, whatever you want to call it. They have had a very long presence in India's Far East. It is American missionaries, Christian missionaries, who converted very, very large parts of the population of the Far East to Christianity. Most of Nagaland has lost its culture. Cultural devastation, genocide, cultural genocide, and conversion to a foreign religion. Who did it? It was American missionaries who did it. With the blessings of the great, magnificent Mr. Nehru. So most of the Christianization and most of the cultural loss happened after 1947, not during British times. Can you imagine that? And you've had American Christian activity, missionary activities in India for going on for decades. You know, this actor Tom Alter, who was this American guy, you know, blue-eyed guy who speaks in extremely good Urdu, not Hindi, Urdu. Well, that guy, his parents were American missionaries. So that's the kind of activities the Americans have been doing, and their objective is to create this new artificial Christian nation out of parts of India, Bangladesh, and Burma. So this is extremely concerning. And the government of India needs to take this up at various levels with the United States. And first of all, and that's number two, and that's second. But first of all, we have to rein in the chief minister of Mizoram, if required. If if he is indulging in anti-national activities, secessionist activities, we should be sacked. I think there is enough justification for that. So I think the call has to be taken by the government of India, by the Modi government. But this is extremely concerning, and the puppet master, as always, is Uncle Sam. Okay, Ashish says, how surprised am I that Donald Trump has won? Well, not a lot, but it is still surprising. So look, I have said this multiple times on the Ask Abhijit show and elsewhere, that I think it was very likely, in my opinion, that Kamala would win, right? But I said, and I did say, that Donald Trump will win if he has kissed the ring. And what do I mean by kissing the ring? It means aligning politically, etc., with the entities that actually rule the United States. Which is the entity that rules the United States? I mean, there's somebody who's ruling the United States. It's not Joe Biden. It's not Kamala Harris. Those two people are incompetent. Joe Biden is, senile or whatever you want to call it, and Kamala is the competence isn't there, right? So someone is still running the United States. So that's the whatever you want to call it. You know, people use different names for it. The defense military establishment, the deep state, whatever. But there is a bunch of individuals who rule the United States, and that group of individuals is not an elected group of individuals. Let's call it the deep state, okay? Whatever you want to call it. So I said that if Trump kisses the ring of the deep state, then he will be allowed to win. So what does that mean? It means that they are now convinced, they have been convinced by Trump and his activities and his actions over the past year or so during the election campaign, that he is aligned with their overall big picture agenda for the United States. So the past 4 years, Kamala and Biden have pushed in several million illegals into the United States. And they have been settled in all parts of the US. They came in through mostly the southern border, the Texas-Mexico border. And they are individuals from all across the world, all illegals, all bereft of passports. But now they probably have voted, and we still have the situation that Trump won. But now you have several million illegals who are settled in the US, and it will be very, very hard for Trump to remove them. So that is done. That's a fait accompli. Okay. Uh, Now, what's the agenda of the deep state? I mean, they want to expand their power. If you are uh, a secretive, invisible group of people, small group of people who have a lot of power, first of all, you don't want to be exposed. You don't want people to know who you are. Secondly, you want to consolidate the power, hold on to the power. And thirdly, you want to expand the power. You want to be even more powerful. So, aligning with that agenda means Trump has to make them more powerful. The Trump regime, wittingly or unwittingly, next 4 years, has to make the United States essentially more powerful. How do you do that? First of all, technologically, the US, through AI and space exploration, is already in pole position. In the next 4 years, it will probably surpass every other nation and leave every other nation far behind via its technological advancements. A lot of that has to do with Elon Musk and Sam Altman and the AI companies, Microsoft and OpenAI and whatever else, Perplexity, who's run by an Indian, and so on. So you have AI, you have space exploration. Before the Trump administration is done, next 4 years, you will have Elon Musk's rockets and whatever else on Mars. So he's going to send, Elon Musk is going to send the Starship, multiple Starship launches to Mars in the next 2 years. There's a launch window every roughly I think every 26 months or so, because the two planets they orbit the sun at different there are different orbital periods, right? So it's every once in 26 months or so that there's a certain amount of time where you have the optimum launch window to launch a spacecraft for Mars from here, from Earth. So I think it's going to be sometime in the next 2 years. So Elon Musk is going to launch a bunch of starships, the gigantic one that he has, the biggest rocket ever made. And 2 years after that, he's going to send humans if everything goes well. So before 2028, 29, you probably will have, if things go well, humans on Mars. Okay. And that's going to make the US like untouchable in the space of, in the context of space exploration. So that makes the US way more powerful than every other nation. That's good for the deep state, right? Secondly, the economy will stabilize. The Trump will stabilize the economy. Is gonna, yeah, it's not gonna be very difficult for him to stabilize the economy. It'll take a couple of years for things to go well, but it'll happen. So the US economy will be stabilized. The US will disengage from Ukraine most likely, and pile on even more pressure on China and probably India as well to some extent. So all of that will uh, uh, consolidate and extend US power. Trump will go hard on NATO and the other European nations as well. Very transactional president, the art of the deal and all that. So overall, the Trump administration, its agenda is kind of in line with the long-term and short-term plans of the deep state, whoever the deep state is. So and I'm sure that Elon Musk is also very much aligned with the deep state agenda and all that. And so are the other invincibles or whoever, that team of people that Elon Musk, that Trump has created, right? There's Trump, there's JD Vance, his vice president. There is Elon Musk, obviously. There is Joe Rogan, the podcast guy. There is Dana White, the MMA guy. Then there's Vivek Ramaswamy. There's Tulsi Gabbard. Who else do we have on this team? I'm sure I'm missing out a couple of people, but you get the picture. There's Kennedy, RFK Jr., and whoever else. So these people will be on board the Trump administration in some way or the other. Elon Musk definitely, and they're gonna make the US, I mean, tremendously more powerful than what it is today. So that all is good for the long term, short term, etc. agenda of the deep state. So, and Kamala Harris and would never have been able to do that. So I think this is a period of time in which the US undergoes some kind of reset and consolidates power, and then 28 they'll see. Do we get the Democrats back or do we get the Republicans and give them another shot, because Trump will be done 2 terms and you're done. So yeah, that's the kind of thing it is. So I'm not tremendously surprised. It's actually good for the deep state to have someone like Trump for a period of 4 years. So yeah, that's how I see it. Okay. Other questions. Okay, Mohammed Ismail says, let me have a sip of coffee. Now that President Trump is, you can win. Okay. Now that President Trump will be in office, will terrorism in Manipur settle down? I just kind of took this question, but yeah, let's briefly address it again. I don't think terrorism in Manipur will subside or reduce to a very large extent. I think Project K, Cookie Land for Christ, will continue. It will continue full steam onward. And yeah, so I don't see that happening, unfortunately. Because look, the objective is to contain India. Unless India, accepts to voluntarily stop growing its economy, they're going to do this. And obviously, India under Modi or whoever will never accept that. Let's cut down on our economic growth and remain mired in Nehruvian growth rates, 4%, 5% per year. That's not going to happen. So I don't see terrorism in Manipur going down. And Trump, whether he likes it or not, it's going to happen. Some things Trump won't be able to control, like what the CIA does, what the US deep state does in various nations, regime change and all that. What Trump will be able to control is whether you start a new war or not somewhere. So Trump has always been anti-war. He was the first president in decades who did not start a new war. And probably he may not start a new war during this next 4-year term. But regime change operations certainly could happen. And what's happening in Manipur, unfortunately, we will have to solve it. We can't wait for the Americans to benevolently turn off the tap on the terrorism. That's not going to happen. So we will have to solve. We'll have to find a solution. Vikram Geopolitical asks a great question. How will Trump handle the anti-India and Khalistani elements residing in the US? When it comes to the anti-India elements, Khalistani terrorists, Khalistani supporters, etc., who reside in the US, Trump may kind of control their activities to some extent. He may have them tone down their activities to some extent, perhaps, possibly. To whatever extent he can, he may do it. So what you may see is that whatever is happening from US soil may simmer down during the Trump administration. But whatever's happening, whatever anti-India activities, etc., are happening from Canadian soil, from UK territory, from Australian territory, etc., those won't stop. Because technically these are separate nations and they are independent sovereign nations technically. We all know that's fiction, that they're all vassals of the US. We know that. But the world doesn't know that, right? Only those who watch the Ask Abhijit show know that. So that will continue. When it comes to Justin Trudeau, look, Trudeau may not win the next election, perhaps. That's a possibility. But whoever wins the next election in Canada, let's say it's Pierre Poilievre or whoever it is, it won't make too much of a difference on the when it comes to the activities of the anti-India forces and Khalistani terrorists who are Canadian citizens, right? So Trump may have the anti-India activity on US soil simmer down to a certain extent, but not from other countries. And yeah, you can't expect him to do too much because it's a form of leverage they have against us. Any and all leverage is valuable because you can use it in negotiations and to affect the outcomes of negotiations and treaties and all that. So why would you give it up entirely? Okay. Let us see. Okay, Geopolitical Dubey says Trump won the election, but will Mr. Trump be allowed to take the oath of office? I think he will. I don't see any impediment to him taking the oath of office. He has won a clear majority. He's won the popular vote. He has won the electoral college votes as well. He has a majority from both perspectives. So I don't think there's any constitutional or legal angle which could help the Democrats or whoever else to prevent him from taking office. So I don't see that going to be a problem. Okay. Okay, Mythical Sati says, can there be other assassination attempts on the new POTUS? What are the impact of this election on other major countries? Well, look, I'd rather not speculate about assassination attempts and all that. Okay, this is something that happens that is deeply illegal activity, and it's very, I mean, no nation can tolerate such things. And so I don't know. Look, how will I know if there's going to be more assassination attempts? I think you should ask astrologers about that. Uh, when is it likely that a certain world leader could face assassination attempts? It's likely that a world leader has a higher probability of facing an assassination attempt, either when he is deeply unpopular in his own country, or he is upsetting the apple cart and rocking the boat, so to say, vis-a-vis the real rulers of the country, the deep state, or he is doing something that makes other countries very uncomfortable, very powerful countries. It harms their interests. These are the roughly broad scenarios in which you could have assassination attempts on a world leader from any country. When it comes to the United States, it's very, very difficult to imagine another country being able to carry out or even attempting, being even able to attempt an assassination attempt on a US president. It's unheard of. It won't, I don't think there's any instance in history where that's happened. So then the only scenario in which an assassination attempt on a US president can happen is either if he is deeply unpopular, broadly and deeply unpopular among the populace, or if he is doing something that is detrimental to the interests of the deep state. President John F. Kennedy comes to mind in that second context. So, in such scenarios, you could imagine that there's a higher likelihood of there being an assassination attempt on a sitting president. That's what I can tell you. So, in those scenarios, you could have such a thing. That's all speculative. That's all hypothetical. We're not talking about any actuals over here. Okay. What are the impacts of this election on other major countries? Oh, there's gonna be lots of impacts on major countries. So let's go one by one with vis-a-vis various countries. Who's gonna be happy with this election? With the fact that Donald Trump returns to power? First of all, India is going to be happy because the past 4 years, the Democrats, the Biden-Harris regime has piled on the agony on India, piled on the misery on India. So India is going to be happy. Mr. Modi is going to be happy for sure. Okay, things will improve between India and the US, transactionally at least. Well, look, even when Trump was president, you had the Delhi riots, etc., which were allegedly carried out by deep state. So Trump may not be able to prevent that, but overall, transactionally, the relationship will improve. So India will be happy. The relations will improve. Israel will be happy. The Democrats have historically, of late, been extremely antagonistic towards Israel. The Obama-Netanyahu relationship immediately comes to mind, right? So now the Israelis will be happy. Netanyahu will be happy. Who else do we think will be happy? Mohammed bin Salman will be happy. I mean, so it'll be good, overall better for him as well. Who's going to be unhappy with this? Xi Jinping, it doesn't make too much of a difference for him whether it's Biden in power or Trump in power. The US is gonna pile on the heat on China. So good for us, India. It gives us options vis-a-vis China. It gives us leverage when it comes to our dealings with China. Good for us. So Xi Jinping won't be happy. China won't be happy. Iran won't be happy. Remember Soleimani, Qasem Soleimani? Donald Trump had him assassinated, the Iranian general. So Iran won't be happy. Iran will face more heat. The Israelis will feel emboldened now by the election of President Trump, that they will have more of a free hand in dealing against Iran. So Iran will be unhappy about this. Putin will be happy. So the impact of this election, once Trump comes to power, is that Trump hates wastage of money. He wants a good deal in everything. And this incredible expenditure the US has incurred since 2022 on the Ukraine war, it's a huge waste of taxpayer money, American taxpayer money. I see Trump shutting that down. What does that mean? What happens if the US shuts down military aid and financial assistance to Ukraine? It means Zelensky is toast. So Zelensky needs to very rapidly come up with lots of various options. Next phase of life. Okay, he needs to get out of Kiev sooner rather than later, because once Trump pulls the plug, the war is over. The US will disengage from the Ukraine mess. It's going to be a huge game changer for Europe as well, for NATO, for the EU. A lot will change there. So there's going to be a lot of concern in the EU right now and in NATO about what Trump's new policies are going to be like. So a lot will change. When it comes to Pakistan, not a lot will change. When it comes to Bangladesh, not a lot will change. When it comes to the Asia Pacific, Indo-Pacific region, Trump will push India to be more active in the Quad, etc. That will happen. So once again, see, right now we are seeing this India-China relationship getting better. Trump will not be happy with that, and he will try to prevent that from happening. So there's going to be pressure on India, certainly, but overall things will get better for India. When it comes to Canada, well, Canada doesn't really matter. The UK doesn't really matter. The Five Eyes nations, apart from the US, don't matter. So all that. In Africa, well, things will go on kind of the way they have, but the US-Russia relationship may kind of get better, kind of, to some extent. And the North Korea thing will also kind of improve, because Trump and Kim Jong-un are kind of friends. They were friends to some extent, and so on. So lots of things, lots of geopolitical relations will get recalibrated for sure. So a lot is going to change, and very rapidly too, once he assumes office, Trump. Okay. Janvi, oh, thank you so much, ma'am. Okay. Yes, right. Okay, so how will the Trump government benefit India now? They will ease up the pressure on India. Look, the question then is, what's the pressure we have been facing, India, from the US? What's happened has already happened. That won't change. So the regime change in Pakistan, the ouster of Imran Khan, and the new government, pro-US government coming in, which happened in 2022, that will not change. The regime change in Bangladesh won't change. But what will change is the other things, the American and the Project K, Cookie Land will also not change. But the relationship between the two leaders will be different. It will be less hostile, less tense, less patronizing, more transactional, but friendlier, warmer. Or the barrage of anti-India sentiments expressed in the Western media may kind of change to a certain extent. They'll tone it down, perhaps, to a certain extent. The sanctions that have been imposed on India last week, just a week or so ago, less than a week ago, by the Biden regime, that may be revisited. Maybe Trump will be willing to perhaps withdraw those sanctions. Trump will want India to buy more US equipment, arms, ammunition, all of that. So that could be beneficial to India to a certain extent. And Trump will be very, very strongly, he was very, very harsh against China. He started the trade and tariff war against China. He's going to take that to the next level, most likely, or at least continue what's already going on. So China will definitely face, if not the same amount of heat, even perhaps even more heat from the US, which is good for India. It gives us leverage against China. So overall, the attitude of the Trump regime towards India is going to be more positive, more friendly than the Biden regime ever has been. I remember the first time Mr. Modi went to Washington after Biden and Kamala took power, I remember he was addressing the press, and Kamala was next to him, and she started lecturing him about human rights and freedom of religion and all that in front of the press. That sort of treatment won't happen. So overall, I see the relationship getting better in a nuanced way. India won't face that much heat. It will be beneficial to India, especially when it comes to our relationship with China. It may give us more leverage against China. But on the other hand, we will be pressurized to kind of distance ourselves from Moscow, which is not good for us. We want to be friendly with everyone. So it's going to be nuanced. It's definitely going to be nuanced, but overall, it's going to be better for India. It's going to be better for the world. So time will tell, but overall, I see it getting better. Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Deepak G. Ishan says, will there be any change in the India-Canada relationship? I don't see too much of a change happening in the India-Canada relationship. Canada, obviously, we know, is a US vassal. It's a US client state. And the change that you will see will be in the US-India relationship. The US, it doesn't serve their interests in making the India-Canada relationship better. Trudeau, as long as he is in power, the relationship between India and Canada will remain the same. Trudeau cannot afford to go back on what he has already done. He cannot afford alienating his terrorist constituency, the Khalistani constituency. He can't afford to alienate them. No political party in Canada can afford to alienate the Khalistani constituency, right? So Canada will remain Canada. Not a lot will change. If Pierre Poilievre comes to power, even then, I don't see a lot changing, because even he will have to appease the Khalistanis, right? The Canadian citizens. There is no such thing as Khalistan, by the way. It's a fictitious la la land. It only exists in Canada. So we can request the Canadian government to give those individuals a piece of territory, and they can call it Khalistan. But I don't see any major change when it comes to the India-Canada relationship. Okay, interesting question. Not about the elections, but yeah, it's geopolitically. It's a topic I've spoken about. So let's take this. So the question is by Yuvraj Kumar. What do I think about the development that's recently happened in the British Indian Ocean territory? Well, now do we remember what the British Indian Ocean territory is? Do I have to go to the map? Let me go to the map very quickly, very rapidly. Where's the map? Where's the map? Let me put that on the screen. I only have one screen here today. I usually have two screens, but let's do it this way. Okay, we open maps. Okay, so yes, you can see the map here. So we're talking about the British Indian Ocean territory, which is Diego Garcia. So in the Indian Ocean, in the Western Indian Ocean, which is incorrectly called the Arabian Sea, it should be called the Sea of Saurashtra. But in the Indian Ocean region, Western region, we have the Maldives, south of the Lakshadweep Islands, and south of the Maldives, we have the so-called British Indian Ocean territory. Now, this is actually an extension of the Lakshadweep Chagos underwater ridge formation. So it's geographically kind of part of the Indian subcontinent, and historically you've had Indian presence over here. Now, this should have been part of Mauritius. So Mauritius is further down south. This is the island of Mauritius. It's an independent nation. It's technically an African nation, but the majority population is Indians, which is very close to the French territory of Réunion. So the British Indian Ocean territory, legally, etc., should have been part of Mauritius, but it was illegally kept aside by the British and annexed by the British, and they evicted the local people who are of Indian and African origin, and they were expelled out of the region. And then in 1973, the Americans built an Air Force and naval base in Diego Garcia, and I can show it to you right here. This is the Air Force base, and there's a naval base also if you look around, and I'm sure you can look around if you want to in your own free time. I'll not do it right now. So why 73? Why this place? In 1971, the US got a disastrous, humiliating defeat when they lost control of East Pakistan. Okay, Pakistan, East and West Pakistan were a US client state, a US vassal state. India vivisected Pakistan and liberated Bangladesh in 71. The Americans tried to project power here, but they were foiled by the presence of Soviet nuclear submarines. The Americans sent an aircraft carrier strike group, and the British also sent one, but they were met with the Soviet nuclear submarines. That's why they could not bully India. They could not arm twist India, and Bangladesh was created. So this exposed the American need for projecting power in this region, and that's why they acquired the BIOT, British Indian Ocean Territory, from Diego Garcia. Now, I made a video about this in which I said that this is one of the last vestiges of British colonialism. British colonialism still exists today, right? And now the International Court of Justice, or whoever it is, I don't remember technically which entity it is, but they have ruled that the British need to get the hell out of here. So the British have agreed to do this, and they have technically transferred sovereignty of the British Indian Ocean Territory to Mauritius. But they have retained the option of controlling, essentially still retaining ownership over Diego Garcia. So I think it's a 99-year lease or something that they've negotiated, or something like that, similar. Okay, I don't remember the exact details. You can look it up. But they will still retain possession of this archipelago, of especially the Diego Garcia atoll. And the Americans will continue to control it. So it will technically be Mauritian territory, but it will still be under the control of the British and the Americans. So nothing really changes. And a few natives may be allowed to perhaps visit or settle some, or create some token settlement or something, just to maintain appearances, keep put on a show, but nothing really changes. So that's the development when it comes to this. Okay, Tejas is one of the many Indians who likes to nitpick. He says, Mr. Abhijit Chawda, with all due respect, you predicted Kamala will win. Haha, look who won. Okay. First of all, I am not in the business of making predictions. I talk about probabilities. Who is more likely to win? And I have said that Kamala, I've said many times that Kamala, I believe, is more likely to win. But I also said that Trump will win if he kisses the ring. There are lots of nuances in these matters. I don't make predictions. This is not the only comment about this. There are lots of people who said, haha, Abhijit, you made the prediction. Please understand nuance. Please go multiple levels deep. The Indian, look, this is not the fault of the viewers. This is the fault of the Indian education system. I'll tell you why. In the Indian education system, okay, let's say you have an exam paper. You are expected to memorize the passage in the textbook and replicate it exactly in your answer. So if you miss a comma, if you miss a punctuation mark, if you replace one word with another, you will get 1 mark less or whatever. So Indians, because of this, they develop this habit of nitpicking. They look for tiny, minute flaws in something, and they say, yeah, look at that. That's wrong. This is wrong. This is what you see over and over again. And it's not the fault of my country people. It's the education system that has done this to your minds. All you do is you look for faults, you look for flaws, but you miss the big picture in the process. So please try to recalibrate the way you look at things. I have never made a prediction that so-and-so will win. I speak about possibilities and probabilities. I am not one of those geopolitical analysts who goes around making predictions. I predicted this and I predicted that and all my predictions come true. No! I don't make predictions, and many of the things I say may not happen. Okay, so come on, please. Tejas Anonymous, come on, man. You're better than this. Come on. Okay, Yash Singh. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, Yashji. So the question is, I have some European friends who were offended when I said that it's good for India if Trump wins. What's my take on this? Will India benefit in any way with the Trump victory? So I've already listed out the ways in which India benefits. Okay, the the thing is that um, the the world has become a very binary place, and a lot of this has to do with the Western mentality, and it goes back to culture, religion, all that. A very binary way of looking at the world, black or white. You may remember that when the American war on terror started, when George W. Bush was the president, they had this attitude: you're either with us or against us. There's no thing in between, right? That sort of thing. So you had to take a side. You either go in the US camp or you are the enemy, and they're going to flatten you. That sort of thing. And in other things also, they have a very binary approach, very binary outlook. And they also have this sense of superiority. We ruled the world, we've been ruling the world for 500 years. So we are superior, and everybody else is inferior. Your interests aren't important. Our interests are what matters, and that sort of thing. Um, so they do have this attitude, and when we speak about our national interest, they say, no, you've got to be pro-West. I remember I was on a debate. There are these news debates on Indian television, right? So I was on a news debate on Republic, Arnab, and some of the other panelists. There were like 2 or 3 Israeli panelists on the show, on that debate. They were Israeli MPs, and they were lecturing us Indians, me, Arnab, and whoever else was on the show who was Indian. They were lecturing us. India has to be pro-Western. India has to be pro-Western. They are Israeli MPs. I will understand if they say that India should be pro-Israel. I'll understand that. I'll respect that, because you are Israeli and your national interest is important to you. That's why you are exhorting us to be pro-Israel. I'll understand that. But they were exhorting us to be pro-West. Who the hell do they think they are? Do they think that they own the West? Very interesting. So they have this attitude, this perspective that we don't matter, our interests don't matter, we don't have agency. We are like the Native Americans, the Indian Americans, the Native Indians, whatever they call, Red Indians, right? No agency. We just a subcontinent of patsies. That's how they see us, kind of. So, if they get offended, that's their problem. You don't have to be concerned about their feelings. It's indeed true that Trump's victory is going to be good for India overall. Not a tremendous lot will change, but overall it will be better for India. So yeah, there we have it. Okay, Hardik says, Russia is making ties with Pakistan and China. Does this mean that if India goes to war with Pakistan or China, Russia will remain neutral, just like India stayed neutral in the Ukraine-Russia war? Look, has India stayed neutral in the Ukraine-Russia war? You can say we are neutral in this matter. Our Prime Minister has even visited Kiev, whatever the spelling is of that city. And he has even embraced Mr. Zelensky and patted his back and listened to him with a very grave expression on his face, etc. We've done that. But we, look, to be very frank, we have, you could say, we have been very pro-India, in the sense that this war has kind of benefited us, and why should it not? So we have been purchasing very large quantities of oil from Russia at reasonably discounted rates, and we have been refining that oil and then selling it to the Europeans at a higher rate. So it's kind of benefited us, not in a small way. And we have refused to let the Western sanctions and the Western war against Russia change our relationship with Russia. So we have maintained a very warm and friendly relationship with Russia despite this war going on. So that is not entirely neutral, that is, you could say, slightly warm towards Russia. Okay. Now, coming back to the question, Russia is making ties with Pakistan and China. Look, every nation looks out for its interest. Russia currently has a certain amount of dependency on China. China is very important for Russia right now, way more important than India. China is roughly 4 times larger as an economy compared to India, roughly, give or take. Okay, don't nitpick again, but you get the point, right? You get the point. So China is really important for Russia. And China, until very recently, had a very antagonistic approach towards India, very hostile approach towards India, right? Our leaders did not even speak for 5 years to each other, that sort of thing. So the Chinese would have encouraged the Russians to open some kind of relationship with Pakistan. And Russia and Pakistan have been dallying with each other for quite some time. There was this a series of exercises that happened every year. Druzhba exercises. Druzhba means friendship in Russian. So Druzhba exercises once a year between Pakistan and the Pakistani military and the Russian military. Once a year would be held from 2015, 2016 onwards until 2021, if I'm not mistaken. You can look up the years and there will be plus or minus somewhere here or there. But every year there was a Druzhba exercise between the two militaries. It would be 1 year, it would be in Russia, 1 year in Pakistan, alternating, right? That sort of thing. And the Russians even sold 2 or 3 military helicopters to the Pakistanis and so on. So there was some kind of thing already going on. But the Druzhba exercises have stopped. They stopped from 22 onwards because India once again became very important for Russia. India is the counterbalance to China, definitely very much, right? So I don't think the Russians will prioritize Pakistan over India ever. If India goes to war with Pakistan, I don't think Russia needs to come to India's rescue. If there's a war with Pakistan, Russia will technically remain neutral. They'll they'll be eating popcorn and watching the annihilation of Pakistan. Okay, I'm not trying to be flippant or anything, but that's exactly what will happen if there's a war between India and Pakistan. It'll be the last war Pakistan ever fights. When it comes to a war, potential war between India and China, Russia will be in a very tough position. If India goes to war with Pakistan, Russia doesn't have to do a thing. India will deal with Pakistan. India and China is a whole different ball game. And Russia will be in a very difficult position if that happens. Thankfully, India and China seem to be on a better track now. There is less likelihood of a war between India and China. But in the hypothetical, fictitious scenario that there is a war between India and China, what does Russia do? Mr. Putin will do his best to stay neutral. And actually, he will stay neutral. No matter how much pressure the Chinese put on him, he will not go against India. I firmly believe that Putin will not do a thing that will harm India's interests. So, we know the Russians have been selling arms and ammunition to both countries, India and China both. They have sold the S-400 system to China as well as India, very nicely balancing things out. Yes. So if there's a war between India and China, Russia will probably, most likely, stay neutral. And Putin will do his best to end the war, if there's a war that happens. And I am pretty certain that whatever rapprochement we are seeing between India and China, I am pretty certain that Mr. Putin has played a big role in that. Because it is in Russia's interests to have the emergence of a RIC coalition, Russia, India, China. It is in all three nations' interests to have a coalition like RIC emerging. RIC is the core group of BRICS, isn't it? And if the three nations can find a way to work together and cooperate, then they can truly create an alternative to the existing Western dominated world order, which hurts every other nation, including these three. So I'm pretty certain that Putin has played a big role in whatever improvement we have witnessed in recent months in the relationship between India and China. And if a war happens, he will do his best to end the war and to act as a mediator. That's how I see it going. Okay. Now, this is a good question by McLovin. Will India continue to improve its relations with China, or will we take a step back? And thank you for the birthday wishes. Will India take a step back now that Trump has come to power? And once Trump becomes, it takes oath and becomes the actual president. Right now, he's the president-elect, but sometime in January, probably 21 or something, he will actually take oath and become the actual president. So once that happens, he's gonna definitely try and steer the ship for India. He's a very that kind of person, and he will definitely want India to become way more pro-US and distance. He will want India to distance itself from China and Russia as well. What do we do in that scenario, which we will come across? Well, I'm sure Mr. Modi and his team are already hard at work grappling with how to deal with this sort of scenario. I'm sure they've already war gamed this out, obviously. So Trump will want us to participate more strongly and play a much more active role in the Quad, which is the four nations: India, Japan, Australia, and USA. So that will happen. And the US obviously will not be very pleased with the recent convergence between India and China. They will not want that to become too strong. But it is in India's interests to have multiple options. We cannot afford to permanently have a hostile neighbor on our northern frontier, the India-Tibet frontier, a much more powerful nation. It's going to take us 20, 30, 40, 30 years, let's say, to come on par with China, assuming our economy keeps growing the way it is growing right now. It's a lot of ifs and buts there, but assuming, okay, assuming. It may take us 30 years to reach where China is, if everything goes well. Then the relationship will be different. But right now, we are a weaker nation. They are about 4 times more powerful than us, cumulative hard power. You can't have a hostile neighbor to your north, which is more powerful than you. Of course, the neighbor has all kinds of other adversaries, so they can't bring their entire force to bear against you, but still. So it makes sense for us to find ways to improve the relationship with China. It makes sense for China to find ways to improve the relationship with us. So I think there's a lot of ground there, lot of ground that both leaders, both nations can cover. A lot of stuff they can do together. We can do together. And I would be personally very pleased to see better relations between India and China. Certainly. I mean, we've historically never had any issues with China, right? For 2,000, 3,000 years, as long as China has existed. I would like to see that happen again. Good relations. So it is in our interests that we withstand Western pressure and push back against Western pressure, which will seek to once again see bad relations between India and China. We need to keep on moving forward with our relationship building efforts with China. And the Chinese obviously have to reciprocate. As long as the reciprocity is there, we need to keep on doing that. So it's going to be a challenge for us, but I think we're going to keep on pushing forward in improving relations with China. Okay. Dinchen Tamang says, does this victory for Trump mean 4 more years for the government of India to work on problems emerging in Mizoram? The problems aren't emerging, unfortunately. The problems are there. These are mature problems. They aren't emergent problems. The problems have been around for a very long time. Mrs. Indira Gandhi knew about the problems. She took a certain approach towards the problem of Mizoram in 1966. You can look up what approach she took. So it's not an emerging problem. It's a problem that's been there for quite some time. And because it's been there for quite some time, I expect that the government of India and our intelligence agencies should know exactly what the situation is and exactly what the solution is. Now, obviously, a solution is a theoretical thing. You have to actually make it happen. And certain components of the solution may lie beyond our sovereign territory, etc. Yeah. So, so overall, I don't see the pressure on us easing up. And the pressure is not coming from these ragtag, half-naked tribals, okay, who are conducting terrorist activities against the native people of Manipur. It's not the ragtag tribals who are the problem. Of course, they are the tip of the spear, of course, and they have to be dealt with. But the person who is wielding the spear is the real puppet master and the real problem, and that is obviously the United States who's doing that. So will the US go easy on India vis-a-vis Manipur, Project K, Cookie Land, all that? No. And Trump, whether he likes it or not, it will happen. This will keep on going on. Because this is something that happens when certain agencies of the US are involved. It means that the president may not even be involved in the whole matter. So, so I don't see that pressure easing up on India when it comes to the creation of Cookie Land for Christ. They will keep on pushing for it. So, you know what they want? What is this Project K, Cookie Land for Christ? Is it that they want to create a new nation with a capital city and a nation with a parliament that is recognized by the United Nations? They don't want that. They don't care about that. They want to create a territory in which the government of India has no control. That's it. It may still be technically part of India on the map, but they want it to be a territory that is not under the actual control of the government of India. And there are large parts of Manipur where such a scenario may perhaps be, being played out right now. So that's the challenge we are facing. I'm using very careful language here, by the way. So I don't think we have breathing space. Whatever we have to do, we have to do. We will not get 4 years in which to devise solutions and then try to implement solutions. We have to do that right now. Right now. Now is the time. There's no future time. Solutions we have to find now. And yeah, the solutions will take time. It's not going to be, it's not a problem we can solve next week, next month, next year. It's going to take, I mean, if you have 1 million infiltrators on your territory, you think it's easy to get them out? It's easy to deal with 1 million invading soldiers. You take them out and you deal with them. But 1 million invading civilians, men, women, children who establish villages and get Aadhaar cards, how the hell do you deal with that? That's the conundrum we are facing. And a lot of that has to do with Mizoram, allegedly. So look, the government of India has to find the solution. That's why we elect them. And that's why we pay taxes. Come on, deal with this and find a solution. Okay. Okay, some comments, I shall not put them up over here, but I shall, okay. McLevin says Trump said he will stop the genocide in Bangladesh. Can he do that? Can we take some action against Bangladesh now? Trump has not said that he will stop the genocide in Bangladesh. He has said he strongly condemns the barbaric violence against Hindus and other minorities in Bangladesh. And I'm sure he can apply sufficient pressure on the government of Bangladesh, on the not the government of Bangladesh, but the illegitimate Mohammed Yunus regime. He can apply sufficient pressure on that regime to essentially stop the genocide, the pogroms that are happening against Hindus right now. That he certainly can do. So I think that he will do. That he will do. I'm sure the first time Mr. Modi and Mr. Trump speak after he becomes the president, after he takes the oath of office, they're going to discuss this. I'm sure they'll discuss it even before that. So that will definitely happen. Can we do something about it? We can't right now because this is a US vassal state. This is a US client state. You do something, the Americans will, throw a tantrum, throw a fit, and they'll do things that will not be pleasant for you. So we can't do much ourselves right now, but we can certainly use the good offices of our friend, Mr. Donald Trump, and have him intercede. So you see, it kind of makes us look very weak, right? India, we are so weak, we can't even intervene in Bangladesh. That is not the case. There are only two nations, or three nations, let's say three, to be more realistic. There are only three nations on the planet that are more powerful than India: the US, Russia, China. No other nation is capable of challenging India militarily. That's how powerful India is. That's the good news. The bad news is, the other good news is that Russia is our friend. We have absolutely uh, no problems with Russia, no conflicts of any kind with Russia. So that's the good news number two. So that leaves us with the US and China. The bad news is that the US and China have proxies that surround us. And that's why we cannot take action against those proxies. East Pakistan, West Pakistan are US proxies. Nepal is kind of 1 foot with the Chinese, 1 foot with the Americans, right? Sri Lanka, well, kind of controlled by America to some extent. When it comes to Burma, civil war between the US and China going on there. And when it comes to Maldives, pro-China. So we are essentially surrounded, encircled by proxies of the two powerful nations that are more powerful than us. And that's why we look like we are helpless in the subcontinent. If those nations, the US and China, did not have proxies in the subcontinent, we would be able to do whatever we wanted. But that's not the case. So right now we can't take action against Bangladesh, but we can certainly have Mr. Trump do something about this. Right. RMS says, is the Indian economy performing poorly? I saw some reports saying this. It depends on who you ask. If you ask certain Indian journalists, they'll say everything is performing poorly. Nothing is going well with the country. But I think if you look at the actual numbers, GDP numbers and all, I think we are doing reasonably well. We are doing actually more than reasonably well. So I'm not concerned when it comes to the Indian economy. We are the only large economy, major economy, that has a zero chance of recession. We're going to be growing at a very good rate if nothing goes wrong for the next 20, 30 years. So I am not concerned when it comes to the Indian economy. I'm concerned about the various geopolitical pressures that the Americans and others would want to apply on us to impede and retard our growth. That's the problem. SS Maseus says, alliance on Pakistan, China, Bangladesh coalition, and Iran, Turks, same with help Pakistan for military against India. And Taliban, Vietnam against America lose, and India never won Pakistan for nuclear. I apologize, but I'm not able to see the question in this. And yeah, okay. I'm sorry, I did not get it. Ameya Belvalkar says, people are saying that Trump will repeal the 22nd Amendment. Is it really possible to change the Constitution with the trifecta? And thank you so much, Ameya. 22nd Amendment, really? Will Trump repeal that? Look, I haven't seen any report that says that Trump will repeal the 22nd Amendment. The 22nd Amendment is that it limits each American president to having maximum 2 terms. Each American president can be elected twice at most. No president can have a 3rd term. Essentially, that's what the 22nd Amendment is. Now, how old is Trump? Let me just check quickly on Google. Trump age. Trump is 78 years old. Good God. So look, by the time he's done, he's going to be 82. At the age of 82, does anybody have the ambition of being president for 4 more years? I think it's very unlikely. So I don't know. People, if you ask the Democrats, they'll say that Trump is the worst person that has ever lived on the surface of the planet. And he's going to destroy the Constitution. He's going to destroy liberty. He's going to enslave everybody. And they'll say he'll be the worst human being ever. The Democrats, they've kind of lost it, many of them. Like I said, the West is a very binary looking, their approach, their perspective is very binary. That's why you have only 2 parties in the US, 2 parties that matter, the Democrats and the Republicans. So you either hate or love. love or hate. There's nothing in between um, for a lot of people. So I don't think Trump will repeal the 22nd Amendment. I think it's a good amendment to have. It's a good thing to have, that every president can be president only for 2 terms at most. Otherwise, you will have dynasties, which we still have, right? It's the first, this election that we just saw in the US. It's the first election in I don't know how many decades where you do not have where you did not have a Clinton or a Bush or a Biden who was running for president. The first election in God knows how many years, minimum 20 years, probably more. So even with the 22nd Amendment, we have such problems happening. Dynasties are running in the US. So I think the 22nd Amendment is a good thing for that country. And I think other nations should also consider having something like that. So I don't think Trump is going to do that. I think it is very rather unlikely. Rather unlikely for that to happen. Now, Green Sobad says, will Trump try to dismantle the deep state? Since he has already vowed to do that multiple times, this may lead to another 1963. You mean JFK, which is 1963. Will Trump try to dismantle the deep state? Look, the previous election, the 2016 election, he won that election on the promise of what? What was the promise he made? He will drain the swamp. What swamp? Washington, D.C., the deep state, the entrenched elite who are unelected, which means the deep state, right? That's the agenda he had espoused. That's the desire he had expressed. That's what I want to do. Obviously, he was extremely unsuccessful in doing that. He could not do a thing about the deep state. Do you blame him for not succeeding? I'm sure he tried. What do you think? So that tells you how powerful the entrenched elite establishment is. So US president can't do a thing against them. So do I think that he will try to dismantle the deep state this time around? I think he will not do any such thing this time around. He's going to stay quiet. He's going to have a very specific, clear agenda of what he wants to achieve, and he's going to work on that. And I'm pretty certain he's going to refrain from stepping on the toes or stepping on the tail of the deep state. I think he has got a couple of warnings already through those assassination attempts. It's very clear that now he knows what he can do and he knows what he should stay out of. And I don't think he's going to try and once again joust against the deep state this time. And we know what happens when you go against the deep state. Like you mentioned here, JFK, 1963. And I remember I don't know how many, a few months ago, I had said that, I had said this on some of the live streams that I thought that Trump was very fortunate that he did not get 1963 during his first term in office. And I also said there was a chance that somebody might try something on him. And it actually happened a couple of times. I think there were 3 assassination attempts against him. The first one was where they almost took him out. It took out a chunk of his ear. Okay, let's not talk about assassination attempts anymore. Anurag says Pelosi got her 20th term. Nancy Pelosi. You have no idea how long that lady has been in essentially in positions of power. Let's go to Google and search for Nancy Pelosi. Okay, 1 second. Give me a second. We go to Google and we search for Nancy Pelosi. I'm going to show you something interesting. So here we are. Okay, I'm sharing my screen. And we go to Nancy Pelosi. We go to images. Okay, there she is. This is fine. But how about JFK? So here is Nancy Pelosi with John F. Kennedy. She attended JFK's inauguration in 1961. That is, that's how long she's been around. And she's got her 20th term. So what can I say? Congratulations, Nancy G. Enjoy your 20th term. Um, okay, Honey says, you say that Pakistan will break up in a few years. Pakistan is an artificial temporary nation, yes. But why would the US ever lose its interest in Pakistan? Because it's the only way to counter India. Saudi might need the nukes technology if Iran ever develops nukes. Well, you make a very good point here. So the answer to that is that Pakistan will break in a few years, which could be 5 years, which could be 37 years. As long as the United States needs Pakistan as a counterbalance to India or for any other purpose, Pakistan will continue to exist. Um, so that's the situation. That's simply a fact that we have to um, deal with. Pakistan will continue to exist as long as it has some utility for either the US or for China. Saudi Arabia is not powerful enough to prevent Pakistan from breaking up if it is breaking up. But the US and China can prop up a military regime in Pakistan. So it's either the US or China that has to support the military regime for it to continue existing. The moment that support evaporates, Pakistan disintegrates. It's going to disintegrate. But yeah, Pakistan is valuable. It's a very valuable piece of real estate. It's a very valuable territory, very valuable military, professional military. Yes, not as good as India. Obviously, we know that they'll be squashed by us if they go to war. But facts are fact. But yeah, they have nukes, and that's a valuable asset to have. A good place to have it. So as long as the US needs Pakistan, Pakistan will limp on and continue to exist. That's just a fact. Okay, Janvi says, why did Trump make JD Vance the vice president and not Vivek? Yeah, initially, a lot of people were surprised that this guy Vivek, he's such a good speaker, so energetic. Whatever room he walks into, he's the smartest guy in the room, right? And he can answer any question. He can deal with any kind of person. He's empathetic. He can diffuse situations. He can disarm people who are trying to attack him and so on. So why JD Vance? Why not Vivek? So initially a lot of people were surprised, but after seeing how JD Vance has performed in interviews and podcasts and how he has dealt with various situations and all, now it's becoming clear that Trump has made the right choice. There's a significant difference between the two persons, JD Vance and Vivek. Vivek is extremely high energy, or rather, a little bit of hyperactivity when it comes to Vivek. He's definitely matured a little and toned it down, but it's still there. And he's hard to relate with for most people because he's clearly so highly intelligent. It's like, can you relate with someone like Einstein, for example? I'm giving a very asymptotic solution here, but it's hard to relate with somebody like that. JD Vance is way more down to earth. He's way more approachable. He's way more relatable, despite being a very rich guy and very intelligent guy himself. But the way he puts himself across is very different from what Vivek does. Secondly, whether you like it or not, skin color matters, religion matters. JD Vance is a white guy, married to an Indian, but he's a white guy, and he's a Christian. Vivek is not only a brown guy of Indian origin, he's also a Hindu. Very bad, very bad, very, very bad. Hindus, look, the Republicans are mostly conservative Christians. And is this controversial? Well, isn't it a fact? Christianity is an exclusivist and supremacist religion. Christians believe that if you don't accept Jesus Christ, you go to hell. Right? Which means all Hindus will go to hell. And the superior way is the way of Jesus Christ. And everything else is inferior. It's a supremacist religion. It's an exclusivist religion. I think there is no controversy in that. Every Christian believes that their religion is superior. and all other religions. If you don't believe in their religion, you are essentially gonna go and taste hellfire. And they believe that Hinduism is a religion of what? Worship of demons, or whatever they call, whatever they say. There was a guy who even said that to Vivek Ramaswamy on his face, that Hinduism is a religion of devil worship. And Vivek is being has been forced to portray himself as a monotheistic Hindu, hasn't he? So Vivek is in a difficult position, and choosing him as the VP candidate would have been, from Trump's perspective, not a good move. He wants to have a vice president who is acceptable to the broadest majority of Republicans. Vivek is a great guy, but he's polarizing. And many Republicans, especially the ones who are Christians, conservative Christians, they would not find Vivek acceptable. And for that reason, Trump made the right choice and chose JD Vance as the VP. And JD Vance comes across as kind of, you know, overall he does better in media interactions and all that compared to Vivek. Vivek, he kind of is hard to relate with for most people. He's way too intelligent for most people to feel comfortable with. JD Vance has that, that easy, friendly kind of vibe that Vivek kind of lacks. It's not Vivek's fault. He's just that kind of person. So overall, I think Trump made the right choice, whether you like it or not. I mean, we would have liked to have an Indian VP, but I think most Indians did not want to have an Indian president, Kamala, right? Most Indians did not want her to be president, despite her being half Indian. So Vivek perhaps will get some kind of position in the Trump cabinet, perhaps. Depends on Trump. Vivek is going to have to lobby for it hard now. He's going to have to go to Trump and sell what he can do for Trump. And that's just how it is. That's the position Vivek finds himself in. He should do it. And I'm sure that Trump will give him some kind of meaningful position in his cabinet that will allow Vivek to prove himself, whether he's made of the right stuff or not. Because Vivek is a very ambitious guy, really ambitious guy. And he certainly has an eye on 2028. So 28 is going to be interesting. It's way too far ahead, but 28 you're going to have Vance, because Trump will be done after two stints in office. So you will have a new Republican presidential candidate. It could be Vance, it could be Vivek. Tulsi Gabbard is a big, strong contender. She could end up being the first female US president. She certainly is made of the stuff that Kamala lacks. So it's going to be really interesting. Really interesting. Okay. Nikhil asks, what exactly is the deep state? Right. What is the deep state? How do I define the deep state is the question. Look, first of all, I think we agree that Joe Biden wasn't running the country these past 4 years. I think we all agree with that. I think we can also agree that Kamala doesn't have the intellectual heft to run a nation. So Joe Biden wasn't running the country, neither was Kamala. But the US, still, somebody was running it, right? Somebody was administering it, whoever is there behind the scenes. So that is something that kind of gives us some kind of answer. But there is some kind of grouping of people, or whatever you want to call it, that runs the country, even when the president and the vice president are incapable of running the country. Now, so the deep state essentially is an extra constitutional, extra electoral power center in the US. Extra constitutional, extra electoral, extra democratic. These people in power, small grouping of very powerful people, they have no constitutional position. They have never been elected, and their power doesn't come from the democratic process. Their power comes from something else. So that's the deep state. They are a number of people. We don't know who they are, but they do exist, who control everything in the US, who control the entire country. Probably the industries and all that, the military industrial complex and all that. And one of the answers could lie in the question, which some people may have asked, as to who are the shareholders of the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is the reserve bank in the United States. And unlike the Indian RBI, which is owned by the government, the US Federal Reserve is privately owned, and no one knows who the shareholders are. That's kind of classified. So maybe that could give some answer. So yeah, that's what the deep state is. It is probably a small group of people who are incredibly powerful and who actually own and run and rule the United States. The president is just a figurehead, just a puppet. Whether he or she is capable of ruling the country or not doesn't matter. The country is going to still be ruled. It's going to still be run. And that's what the deep state is, and that's what they do, and so on. Okay. Arush says, how to study the Far East of India, the so-called Northeast, in detail. Some books you'll suggest. Maybe you must make a weekly podcast on the Far East. Well, look, I can't think of any book off the top of my mind because I've read so many books that they all get mixed up in my mind. Okay, so how to study how to study any region in detail. It helps if you go there. But if you can't go there, you have to read books. So right now I don't remember. There are a number of books in the history of Assam, the history of Manipur, and so on. History of Burma also is important to read, because it's the Indian Far East is geographically part of what we call Southeast Asia. Okay, it's our chunk of Southeast Asia. The same way that Jammu Kashmir, Ladakh, etc. are our chunk of Central Asia. We are a gigantic nation, a whole subcontinent. So what you should do is, let's say, go to Amazon and search for books on Assam, search on books on Manipur, and buy 2-3 books that are the most highly rated with lots of reviews and ratings, and 4+ star rating or something. That's how you could approach. And you can look at journal articles and all. That's what you can do, and it'll take you time, but that's how you approach the study of any subject. Right now I can't remember the names of any books. Some of the books I remember are not worth mentioning, or I could mention them. If you want to study Manipur, one of the most infamous books for the study of Manipur is by one of the enemies, a lady called Ethel St. Clair Grimswood. Her husband was the political agent in Manipur in 1891, and he was taken out by the Manipur armed forces. And that's what kind of led to the Anglo-Manipur War, which Manipur lost, and that was the final nail in the coffin of the sovereignty of Manipur. So this lady, Ethel St. Clair Grimswood, she wrote a book about Manipur, which is obviously written from the perspective of an enemy. It may be, kind of flattering in some ways and all, but come on, it's your enemy who wrote that. So I would not recommend that book, but I'm sure there are lots of good books about Manipur. One of the good books would be the Chaitharal Kumbhaba, which is the chronology, the chronicles of the kings of Manipur, which go back about 3,500 years and so on. But just do your own research, and read as much as you can. Okay. Good question. 1.5 hours in. Shaswat says, what's the impact of Elon Musk in this US election? His impact is immense. Elon Musk has made all the difference in this election. Look, Elon Musk is the richest guy in the world, most likely. He's probably going to be the first trillionaire. A guy born in South Africa, very tough childhood, abusive father, and so on. Comes to the US as an immigrant, enrolls for a PhD in physics, I think, and drops out after 2 or 3 days. and becomes an entrepreneur and groundbreaking, path-breaking entrepreneur, and one of the founders of PayPal, and so much more he does, right? Then there's Tesla, there's SpaceX, and all that. Um, he is the owner of the most path-breaking, groundbreaking space exploration company, rocket company ever. He makes the most powerful rockets. He has revolutionized everything. But and you know what? He's an extremely ambitious guy. And the problem he faces is that he's an immigrant. He was born outside of the United States, which means that never he can never become the president of the United States. One second, I'm checking something out. That's why I'm looking here. Yeah, okay. So I put this tweet out, and let me put that on the screen. The tweet of mine. So here's the tweet. Okay, you can see it now. So the question that was asked is the same question you were asking here. What was the biggest factor in Trump's election victory? And my answer was Elon Musk was the biggest factor in Trump's election victory. Elon Musk is a man who can never be US president because of Article 2, Section 1, Clause 5. You can look it up. But Elon Musk can possibly become even more powerful than a US president. And I ask you, guess how? And Trump owes him big time. So that's what I said today. And let me now kind of elaborate on that. A guy like Elon Musk who's extremely ambitious. He would have loved to be president, right? But he can't. So what he can do is become the kingmaker. How did he become the kingmaker? By spending $44 billion. He spent an amount of $44 billion to become the kingmaker. And he acquired Twitter with that sum of money. So he buys Twitter, he renames it, rebrands it to X.com. He was the original owner of X.com. And he turns Twitter into a free speech platform. Twitter was very badly censorious. It used to censor everybody, block people at the whims and fancies of Vijaya Gade, right? My Twitter account was frozen for years. For the longest time, I was stuck at around 60,000 subscribers. Like 2-3 years, not a single subscriber was added. And on 2 occasions, Twitter deleted my followers. On one fine day, I wake up in the morning and I see exactly 20,000 subscribers have been wiped out. And then a few months later, exactly 7,000 once again in the morning have been wiped out. That's what they did to me. And for the 2 or 3 years, my account was stuck at 60,000 subscribers. The moment Elon Musk buys it, my subscribers count starts growing. So that's the kind of approach they had. It was very badly censored, this platform. Elon Musk bought the platform, turned it into a reasonably free speech platform. And now it's the biggest marketplace for news, essentially. Nobody watches legacy news anymore. Nobody goes to the New York Times or Washington Post or BBC or whatever. Everybody comes to Twitter to see what's happening in the world in real time, right? And he unbanned Donald Trump. Vijaya Gade and Jack Dorsey, they had banned Donald Trump. They had banned his account while he was still the sitting president. Incredible. I mean, that tells you that the president of the US is merely a figurehead. He's simply a puppet. But that's what they did. So Elon Musk takes over and he gives the he gives the Republicans a voice once again. They had been censored out of everything. Lots of people were banned from Facebook, Meta, whatnot. People had to go to platforms like Rumble. Trump had to resort to creating his own platform called Truth Social. I mean, that's what they did to free speech in America. Horrible. So Elon Musk brought free speech back, and he gave the Republicans a voice again. And eventually, he decided to put his money where his mouth is, and he backed Donald Trump. He endorsed Donald Trump, and he brought a bunch of people together. People like Dana White, people like Joe Rogan. Everybody, they converged together somehow, and so Elon Musk has been a game changer, complete game changer. Without Elon Musk acquiring Twitter and giving a voice to the Republicans again, Trump would not have won this. So Elon Musk's impact cannot be overestimated. Incredible impact. The one single factor that has been responsible for this victory, instrumental in this victory of Donald J. Trump. Okay. Daily Dose of Gaming says, okay, thank you so much for the birthday wishes. So China now has two stealth fighter jets, two variants. Yeah. And they both look like this, like the American thing, right? Uh, have you heard of Operation Titan Rain? TITAN Titan Rain. Google it whenever you want, whenever you have the time. This was a Chinese hacking operation on the United States in the early 2000s, maybe late 90s, early 2000s, in which they stole tremendous quantities of American military secrets, entire blueprints of fighter planes and fighter jets and whatnot, and much more. All kinds of classified data information. And this included the design, the entire design of the F-35, I believe. If F-22 also, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure which, definitely the F-35. And then they came up with the J-22 or whatever they call it, and it's kind of a ripoff of the F-35. And now they have another variant of that, the Chinese. So they now have two stealth fighter jets, the Chinese. They recently revealed the second one just a couple of days ago. So yeah, the Chinese have two stealth fighters that are fifth generation fighter planes. India, we don't have any. We have a 4.5 generation fighter plane, which is not something we manufacture. We have to buy it from abroad, which is the Rafale. And we are developing the AMCA, which will take its first flight in the late 2020s or early 2030s. So the question is, should India buy the Sukhoi 57 or the F-35? Since we won't have any stealth fighter until 2032, let's say. So even then, we'll have just a handful. It'll be by the late 2030s that we'll have maybe a decent number of the AMCAs. So what do we do in the meanwhile? Do we buy the Sukhoi 57, which is a fifth generation stealth fighter? Do we buy the F-35, which is supposedly the best stealth fighter in the world, fifth generation? Look, you buy the F-35, you're crippled. I've said this so many times. You buy an American product, they can deactivate it at a moment's notice. You are then a hostage. The Australians found out the hard way. We are no Australia. We are not a white nation. We are a bunch of brown people. We cannot afford to buy an aircraft that costs 100 million plus per piece, which can be deactivated on demand by the Americans. We simply can't. It is suicidal to do that. What about the Sukhoi 57? The Sukhoi 57 is a fifth generation fighter plane. Has it been inducted in large numbers in the Russian Air Force? I'm not sure about that. It's definitely a decent fighter plane. We were developing a fighter plane PAC FA or something with the Russians, but the Russians were being very obstinate and they were refusing to part with certain technological aspects of the fighter plane and all that, and they wanted to develop everything else themselves without and not involve us. So they were being very problematic, and eventually we cancelled that project, the co-development of that fighter plane, and lost a bunch of money in the process. So that's the experience we had with Russia. Now they have the Sukhoi 57, which is the kind of the output of the project. If it is good enough, we can buy it. We can be reasonably sure that the Russians won't put, what do you call it? Kill switches in the Sukhoi 57. We have had a lot of experience using Russian technology platforms, fighter planes. They have never done this ever to us. So we can be reasonably certain that if you buy the Sukhoi 57, at least that problem won't be there. Will it be a good enough fighter plane? That's something I think the Air Force experts have to look into. They have extremely stringent standards usually. So I think they can look into this. But if we do need to have, let's say, a bunch of fighter planes in the meanwhile, we can either, if the Sukhoi 57 is good enough, we can buy a bunch of those, maybe 100, let's say. Otherwise, if the French are willing to cooperate, we can set up a production line of the Rafale in India. Let's say we give them an order for 100 fighter planes with the condition that they transfer full technology to us, including the jet engine technology, and we set up a production line in India. So it's all about how you negotiate, what leverage you have, and what you're giving to give and take. So I think we do face this fighter plane crunch. Since I was like a toddler, I've been hearing that we need 34 squadrons, but we have like what, 18, 20, 21, whatever. That's been a perennial problem. The past 10 years of the Modi government, we've only had the 36 Rafales that came in. That's it. Something has to be done about this. So yeah, either buy it from the Russians or the French, with the caveat that we build it in India. We set up production lines in India, and we pay for the technology transfer, but the technology has to be fully transferred. It's not easy to get technology transfers, full technology transfers from anybody, but it can happen if you're willing to pay the price. So we'll see. All right. Okay, let's see what other questions we have. McLevin says, is it possible that India is purposefully dumping khalistanis in Canada? Look, I can't speculate about that. Anything is possible theoretically, but in actuality, what is happening? Look, interesting, but yeah, I don't know about that. Okay, Spandan says, thank you for the birthday wishes, sir. The question is, what's your opinion on Poland's approach to counter illegal immigration, and how should India deal with illegal immigration? So Poland has there's a couple of countries, there's a couple of nations in Europe that have a very strict immigration approach policy, very hardline approach. No immigrants allowed, or selectively some immigrants are allowed. So, for example, Poland is okay with allowing Ukrainian refugees, but they don't want any non-white refugees. Okay, fine, fair enough. It's your country; you can do whatever you want. And Hungary also has a very strong, very hardline policy that is anti-immigration. We don't want immigrants. I think, look, I respect that. You don't want a certain flavor of immigrant, don't get it. Don't allow that. You don't want non-white people, your choice. It's your country, your rules. I am perfectly okay with that. Every nation is a sovereign nation, and every nation has the right to set its own rules. So my point is, illegal immigration is destroying Europe. It's destroying the fabric of society in Europe, and it's a big problem. So I think Poland and Hungary are doing a good job of that. So that's my opinion on that. Good for them. Keep your country, keep your people safe, and allow in immigrants selectively, only the kind of immigrants you want. Perfectly okay with that. I'm perfectly okay with that. And no illegal immigrants are allowed, and borders are sealed properly, and anyone who tries to come in is given a dose of the water cannon and whatnot. So good. How should India deal with illegal immigration? Yeah, we have a huge issue with illegal immigration. Three major kinds of illegal immigrants in India. First is the Bangladeshis. We probably may have around 100 million Bangladeshis who have infiltrated into India and who have settled everywhere. Huge problem. Second, Rohingyas. They have also been settled in India, brought into India and settled. Rohingyas are from Burma, but they've been settled in Jammu and whatnot. I don't know what kind of a nation we are. We are more of a joke than a nation that this sort of thing is allowed. And third is cookies, the cookie terrorists who have been flooding into Manipur via allegedly through Mizoram and whatnot, and even directly into Manipur. By allowing any Tom, Dick, and Harry to come into your country and settle down, especially those who have no respect for your culture and your civilization, you are turning yourselves into a joke, and that's what India has become today. We have become a joke. We are allowing the enemy to come in. They will not become one of us. They do not respect our culture, our civilization. They seek to break it. They seek to destroy it. And we are allowing them to come in. We are giving them documentation. We are allowing them to settle. We are settling them down in the slums in every city. What kind of a joke of a nation are we? And this is a matter for the central government to take some action on. Right? What should India do about this? India should find a way, no matter how much it costs. India should find a way to deport every last illegal immigrant back to wherever they came from or wherever else. Not on our territory. So my question is, what has the government done about this in the past 10 years? I don't know if they've done something. Maybe it's not visible, but you see them everywhere. The illegals everywhere. It's open. It's blatant now. So What should India do? Simple but hard to do. Identify and deport every single one. I'm not talking about doing anything beyond deporting them. Just deport them back to wherever they came from. It's gonna cost us a lot of money to do this. But yeah, you create the problem, you got to solve it. And secondly, find a way of fixing the leaks on the border. You have the BSF and whatnot on the border. What the hell are the BSF doing? How did 100 million Bangladeshis enter India? Who is in charge of the India-Bangladesh border? The Border Security Force. The role of the BSF, which is a paramilitary force, not the Indian armed. So the BSF, the CRPF, etc., the Assam Rifles, these are police forces, paramilitary forces. These are not part of the Indian military. They don't come under the Indian armed forces, Air Force or Navy or Army. The paramilitary forces are police forces who wear army-like uniforms and who have light weapons, automatic weapons. But these things need to be investigated, because clearly there's an element of deep corruption in this, that so many of these individuals have been allowed to infiltrate into India. So that's what we need to do. I don't know where we are on that, but it's this country has become a joke. We are allowing our enemies to come in, while we have Hindus from Pakistan who are made to live in subhuman conditions, if they're even allowed to come into India. What kind of a joke of a country are we? I mean, seriously, I don't know what to say. Okay. Okay, RMS says population of Bangladesh is 169 million. How did 100 million come to India? In 2014, the government of India officially stated that there are 50 million, 5 crore Bangladeshis in India, illegal infiltrators. Okay? Official statement of the government of India. Now, don't ask me for a source. Why don't you go on Google and look it up? Please do that. Do that much. Google search karne ka. So, officially 50 million in 2014. I would imagine in the past 10 years, maybe few million more came in. Maybe it's doubled now. Or let's say not a single person came in since 2014. We still have 50 million. So then it means that the actual population of Bangladeshis is your official 169 million in Bangladeshi territory, plus 50 million or 100 million in India. This is simple arithmetic. Where did they come from? They came from Bangladesh. If they had not come, then Bangladesh's population would be 169 million plus whatever exists in India. It's as simple as that. I mean, is that so hard to understand? Okay. Okay. Let's talk about the US elections, right? Bangladesh and all. Yeah, Samarth asks an interesting question. Why do all American and European celebrities support Democrats? Now, that's a very valid question, first of all. Okay, it's a very valid question. I remember Arnold Schwarzenegger. As a kid, I loved the guy. I mean, he played all these macho roles, very masculine roles. He killed the Predator. He was Conan the Barbarian, and so much more, right? So the guy was born in Austria, one of the greatest bodybuilders of all time. Tremendous respect for what he did. And he was number one in Hollywood as well. And then he became the governor of California on a Republican ticket, right? A Republican throughout. But he's been anti-Trump and he's been supporting Kamala. Why would someone like him do that? And why do all these other entertainers and celebrities in the US always support the Democrats? Very few of them, if any of them, would support a Republican or say vote for Trump. Why is that? Look, I'll tell you what is being alleged in the US, okay? The allegation is that they are all compromised in some way. They've all been trapped in some way or the other, and some videos have been taken and some incriminating footage, etc. Maybe there of them doing certain things that are probably illegal, and so that is used to blackmail them, and that's why they are all on board the program. That is the allegation that is very common, very widespread in the US. Now, do we have evidence of that? I don't think evidence has very clearly emerged, but look, recently we had that Epstein thing, who apparently committed suicide, and there was a client list which has never been made public, but which the government has apparently. So why is that not being made public? Then you have the Diddy thing, right? The P Diddy, that fellow. He also has been he's now in jail, if I'm not mistaken. He also has all kinds of very bad allegations against him. So this sort of thing apparently is very common in the US, in Hollywood, among the entertainer circles, and also maybe that's why the politicians may have a lot of dirt on these celebrities, which is something that is used as leverage, and that's why the celebrities all support the Democrats. That is the allegation that is widespread. Do I have evidence of that? No, I'm just telling you what I've heard. Okay. Okay, let's take this one. I think this question was Aryan has been asking for quite some time. Okay. Their entire campaign was Trump versus machine. And now that they have won and have intelligent people like Musk, won't they try to systematically remove the deep state? Happy birthday. Well, thank you for the happy birthday. I haven't seen this Trump versus machine thing, but okay. So yeah, Trump has won. The Republicans have won. They have intelligent people like Musk. Won't they try to systematically remove the deep state? Well, the deep state will also have a lot of intelligent people and people who are working for them and who are not known. If the deep state is something that controls all the resources of the United States, the entire economy, all the businesses, everything, then don't you think that is way more powerful than a couple of people, Trump, Musk, and Ramaswamy, and JD Vance, and what, Tulsi, RFK Jr.? If you can control it's like Kardashev scale 1. Kardashev scale 1 means a civilization that controls the entire energy output of an entire planet. Scale 2 is the entire solar system. Scale 3 is galaxy, and scale 4 is whatever, right? Universe. And scale -1 is, let's say, an entire country. All the power. What can a couple of people do against you in that situation? They can't, right? So I think it would not be very wise for Elon Musk or Trump to go against the deep state. Everyone knows what happens. 1963 was an example. So, yeah. Right. Vikram Geopolitical says, Pakistan showed interest in buying S-350 missile defense system from Russia. What's my views? And thank you for the wishes. Pakistan is a US asset. It's US client state, US vassal. The Americans would want Pakistan to acquire some Russian technology so that it can fall into American hands, so it can be kind of reverse engineered, right? There was a time when Pakistan was a Chinese client state for about a decade or so, right? And if you remember, when the alleged operation against Osama bin Laden happened in Abbottabad, one of the helicopters of the US Marines, it crashed because of rotor updraft or whatever in that compound in Abbottabad, and it crashed, and the Americans had to destroy that aircraft, the helicopter, by blowing up explosives in it. And yet they could not destroy it completely. And the Pakistanis allowed the Chinese to come and take samples and do whatever they wanted with the aircraft. So the Chinese are able to acquire some kind of technological know-how from the ruins, from the destroyed wreckage of that helicopter. So if the Pakistanis are able to somehow acquire the S-350 from the Russians, if the Russians are still stupid enough to sell it to the Pakistanis, it will end up in US hands. So I don't think it's going to happen. I don't see that happening. Even the Chinese will not want that to happen. So, yeah, after 2022, Pakistan has become once again a US client state. Until 22, it was a Chinese client state. They called the Chinese their iron brothers, right? And so on, until Imran Khan was in power or in office. So there you have it. Okay. Dhruv's game says, did Trump kiss the ring? Like I said, yes, you can say that he did, which means that he will not do anything that will go against the interests of the entrenched deep establishment of the US. He will this time not tread on their toes. He will not walk on their tail. He will stay clear of anything that goes against the interests of the deep state. And he will do his best to make America great again, which means make the American economy stable, make America a technological and spacefaring superpower, even more than what it is today, and try and deport the illegal immigrants and all that sort of stuff. Mainly, it's about the economy. It's about stabilizing the economy. The economy has not been doing well in the US, right? Tremendous inflation and whatnot. All of that is what he will do. He will not try and clean up the swamp and all that. He will stay clear of that. So yes, from that sense, he has understood what is allowed, what is not allowed, what will get you assassinated, what will be okay. So in that sense, he has indeed kissed the ring. He's a much wiser Donald Trump this time. The first 4 years, he was a maverick, and he was not able to do anything because he was seen as an outsider by the political establishment. This time around, they're going to respect him tremendously. And he's no longer an outsider. The US political system is going to see him as a colossus now, and he's going to act way more presidential. And even the international geopolitical world leadership is going to see him very differently this time. So his entire outlook, approach, behavior, agenda is going to be significantly different from what it was first time around, with some commonalities. But drain the swamp is gone, which means that he has kissed the ring. Okay, let's take a couple more questions. Aha, is good question. I like. Yes. Jagdish Mali asks a great question. How will Trump deal with BRICS? Trump will not look at BRICS with a benevolent eye. He will see BRICS as bad guys. And he will say to Modi, Narendra, BRICS is bad. Putin bad, Xi bad. You need to come and be our friend. We need to do business together. So that's the kind of approach he's going to have. Obviously, he can't force India out of BRICS or something, but he's going to put pressure. Look, there are lots of ways of applying pressure on a country. Lots of ways. Project K, Khalistan, etc. Manipur, Mizoram. That's one pressure point. Second, the Khalistan terrorists in various countries, the Anglosphere countries. There is that. Then you have all the various anti-India assets that the Americans have in various parts of the Indian establishment. Those can be unleashed on demand. You can have award wapses, you can have farmer protests, you can have weightlifter protests, or whatever protests. You can have all kinds of things can be unleashed in India. So there are lots of ways they have, the Americans, of applying calibrated pressure from various angles on India. So they will use all of that leverage that they have in different ways to try and have India become a loose member of BRICS, not a core member of BRICS. They'll try that. They'll definitely try for that. And Trump will also try that. And it's up to us to find a way to resist that pressure. See, very interesting times we are living through. Very interesting and very challenging times for us. Vikram says, will Trump be able to stop any of the civil wars going on around the world? Syria, Sudan, Myanmar, Yemen. A lot of that may be beyond his control. Like I said, he will stay out of certain things. Some of these civil wars, we know there's US involvement. But does the US public know that? I assure you they don't. We know it here because we are right next door. The civil war in Myanmar, it's a proxy war between the US and China. And it's spilling over into India, and they're trying to create a Christian country. All of that is being done by the US. Does anybody sitting in the US know about this? Do you think they know about this in Salt Lake City, Utah? Do you think they know it in Richmond, Virginia? You think they know about this in Boca Raton, Anchorage? No one knows about this. The American citizenry is the least informed in the whole world, probably. They don't know anything beyond what's happening in their own little town. That's how it is. So Trump will let this go on unless it is something that harms US national interest. And a lot of these civil wars and regime change operations are beneficial for the US. So he won't stop that. I don't see him stopping that. Why would he? I mean, look, nobody does social service in the world. Geopolitics is not about social service and doing good for the world. It's about doing good for myself, for my country. That's how it works. So I don't see him doing that. Okay. Shaswat says, thank you, first of all. Is Mr. Trump on the way of another JFK? Are you talking about 1963, the assassination? I hope not. I don't think so. Mr. Trump is much wiser this time. So, like I said, I don't think he's going to step on the toes of the deep state. Now, the second question is, how will the relationship between Mr. Modi and Mr. Trump be in his second term, as both of them are heavily patriotic? Will there be a trade and tariff war? Good question. Look, their personal relationship is great. They both like each other very much. Okay, they get along very well together, and they enjoy meeting each other and so on. So on a personal level, the relationship is great. But this is not about personal relationships. It's about the interests of their respective countries. And in that case, Mr. Trump obviously has complaints about India, trade, tariffs especially. One of the examples he likes to give is Harley Davidson. India taxes Harley Davidson and imposes very heavy tariffs on the import of Harley Davidson motorcycles. That's an example he likes to give. So he's going to push India on that. And he's going to say that if you do this, I'm going to impose tariffs on everything you export to our country. He's a very transactional guy, which is okay. So we know how he's going to be. So I'm sure our government is going to be prepared for that. There's going to be areas of agreement, areas of disagreement, but as long as we can negotiate constructively, things should work out fine. But yeah, he's gonna push us when it comes to tariffs. Okay. Okay, Nitish says, is GT 650 overrated these days? I have no idea what that is, so let me quickly Google that. What is a GT 650? One second. Let's go to Google, and we're gonna try and find that GT 650. GT 650. What is that? Oh, the Royal Enfield model thing. Okay, GT 650. I'm not really sure. Is it overrated? I'm not allowed to have a motorcycle, by the way. I'm not allowed to. Apparently, I am capable of being a very rash driver, so I'm not allowed to have a motorcycle. I don't mind having one, but I'm not allowed to. So I don't look into motorcycles, so I don't know what the deal is. Is it overrated? Is it great? I don't know. I think if I were to have a motorcycle, I would either have one of those, choppers, or something like a Harley Davidson, something, Royal Enfield. I hear it's got a great reputation, especially in India, but yeah, not much experience with that. So I'm sorry, but I won't be able to answer this question in a meaningful way. But yeah, I'm not allowed to. Okay. Yash Singh says, do you think Mr. Modi ji is looking a bit strong after the recent election win? After Trump's recent election win, Modi ji, again, along with Yogi ji, is making narrative of uniting Hindus. Look, the recent election win, I'm not sure which one you're referring to. Are you referring to Trump? Are you referring to Haryana? Are you referring to 2024 general elections? I'm not sure which one you're referring to. But the 2024 general elections, if you're talking about that, Mr. Modi did not win a complete majority. He's the head of a coalition government. So that doesn't make you appear very strong. Of course, it doesn't make you appear weak either. You were able to form a coalition government. It's a third consecutive term as Prime Minister of India. I mean, how many people have done that? So that is a tremendous achievement, no doubt. But he doesn't look as strong as he did in 2014 or 2019. 2019 was the peak pinnacle of his power because he got a gigantic mandate on his own, right? Now, maybe he's a slightly diminished prime minister, but still, of course, he's the one man. He's the man. He's still the man, isn't he, Mr. Modi? So yeah, that's how it is in politics. Times change, and we have to understand that times change, and we have to keep in step with the times. All right, all right. We will take maybe one or two questions more. Forgotten Men says, first of all, thank you. Will India and the US deepen their technological and military alliance, cutting edge technology alliance, as India's workforce grows and jobs become scarce? Will visa restrictions ease on Indians? Look, I don't know about the cooperation, cutting edge technological cooperation. If we do ameliorate that, strengthen that, good for us, but it should not be conditional. Like if you jointly develop technology or you buy something from the US, it should not have any kill switches, which is always a problem when it comes to US technology. So that's something we have to be really careful about, we as India. Now, about jobs and visa restrictions, interesting question. Right now, if you want a US visa, this is something the Democrats have done. It takes you like 782 days or something. If you are applying for a visa from an Indian city, Chennai, Bangalore, Mumbai, Delhi, or whatever, it'll take you more than a year to get your visa appointment. On average, the waiting time. You do it from Beijing, it takes 3 days. They're deliberately trying to slow down things and pressurize India in this manner. Now, Trump made an interesting comment a few months ago on a podcast somewhere. He said that we want legal immigration, not illegal immigration. We want high quality immigrants. Indians are the highest quality immigrants with the best degrees, best education, and all that. And Indians can also be the worst quality immigrants. What you see in Canada, all the riffraff going there. So Trump said that we get these immigrants who come in with these extremely high qualifications. We give them an education, and then they are forced to go back to their native countries because we don't give them jobs or whatever. So Trump says that if you get a degree from a US university or college, it should come with a green card. So if he keeps that promise, it's going to be a complete game changer for Indian students. Complete game changer. It will be a tremendous loss for India in terms of brain drain, but it will be a complete game changer for Indian students. And it will accelerate the brain drain out of India significantly. So that's something he can do. He can take away a whole lot more of our talent if he wants to. But you know what? It's not his fault. It's our fault that our system is so, what's the acceptable polite word? So crappy that nobody wants to stay here. So yeah. So let's see how that goes. Maybe he will give a green card with every degree. That would be a complete game changer. Good God. Okay. Let's. Dungar Singh Chauhan says, "Are the Rothschilds the real establishment?" Well, allegedly they are. So some people claim that is the case. Do we have evidence of that? Maybe circumstantial evidence, maybe not. The possibility exists. That's what I would say. Okay, are we done? I guess we're done. I guess we're almost done. Shh. Yes, sir. Shh. Do not talk too much about certain things. Okay, I'll take one final question. Please ask me a good question, somebody. Let me quickly look around. Okay, this is today's last question. We have crossed way beyond 2 hours. Ujjwal says, how do Russia and China see the Trump victory? And how much is the US deep state willing to spend on terrorist proxies? Okay, from a Russian perspective, I think there's going to be optimism. Trump and Putin understand each other. They know how to deal with each other. Putin will be optimistic that the Ukraine war can be resolved sooner rather than later, definitely during the Trump presidency, maybe in the first half of the Trump presidency, maybe in the first quarter of the Trump presidency. Okay, so there's going to be optimism in Russia. When it comes to Xi Jinping and China, nothing changes for them. Maybe the US comes even harder against China. So not a lot of optimism is going to be there in China right now. Now, how much is what about the US deep state and spending on terrorist proxies? They use every trick in the book and every method in the toolkit, including terrorism. Aren't we aware that the Americans funded and financed Pakistani terrorism against India for decades? They did that in the past. Don't you think they are capable of doing that today? What's Project K? What's Cookie Land? What's that? That's terrorism against Indian citizens, right? So that's your answer. That is your answer. Parul says, was Kamala the better option or Trump? I think Trump's way more entertaining. Kamala is just I'm happy Trump won. Better option overall for the US, for the world, for India. Obviously, he's going to make the US more powerful, which can be a problem for the whole world in the long term. But hey, let's have fun today, shall we? All right. I know we've got so many more questions, but I'm gonna end it here. We've crossed 2 hours, 16 minutes. So thank you so much, all of you, for attending this extraordinary session, this emergency episode of Ask Abhijit, the election episode. I really appreciate your questions. Apologies to those of you whose questions I could not take. And once again, let me remind you, next week I'm launching a very important, very interesting new podcast called Understanding America. 1 episode per week, at least 100 episodes. We're going to dive really deep into what America is. And we're going to go chronologically into US history to really understand what this nation is. The most important nation in the world today, the most powerful empire the world has ever seen. We better understand this country. And we don't. So that's what this podcast is going to be about. It starts next week. And I look forward to your viewership in that. So with that, let me conclude today's live stream. Thank you so much for watching. Keep asking questions, keep raising your standards, and I will see you very soon in the next live stream. Thank you, and see you soon. Bye-bye.